Welcome to the Voodoo Power Podcast.
Welcome to Plates of Pancakes. We're sitting down today with Keith Caton. Coach Caton is the head strength and conditioning coach at Manvel High School. Prior to Manvel, Caton was at Burns High School as the director of athletic performance. Coach Caton spent time at the collegiate level as an assistant strength and conditioning coach for Syracuse University, with additional stops at Indiana, Baylor, Western Kentucky, University of Missouri, Elon, Auburn, and the University of Southern Mississippi. Coach Caton has worked 15 bowl games in his career and has been a part of numerous conference championships, including the Big 12 Football Championship, the Cotton Bowl Classic, and the Tostitos Fiesta Bowl. He has 2 master's degrees and is SC/CC certified and holds a USA Weightlifting Level 1 Performance Certification. In 2016, Caton was awarded the title of Master Strength and Conditioning Coach by the Collegiate Strength and Conditioning Coaches Association, the highest honor given in the profession. So welcome to the show, Coach.
Thank you so much. Just happy and grateful to be here.
I've had your name on a list. I keep a ton of names on a list, and I slowly, as people make connections or things like that, I'm able to get to some of these names. And so your name came up a while back, and man, I am happy we were able to sit down and do this.
Yes, sir. Me too.
Through all those stops, you spent some time at Missouri, and I'll hit on that first, just because I am from Missouri. How was your time in Columbia?
Man, I loved it. So I was there for 5 years. I was there with Pat Ivy and Josh Stoner. Those were 2 of the main head guys type deal. We had some really, really good football teams. I also worked baseball and wrestling while I was there. Fun times. And we had one of those staffs that we were kind of ahead of our time. Like, we were doing a bunch of, because this was, early 2000s. We were doing Tendo work, and we were doing a bunch of stuff. One of our guys, Brian Mann, was there, velocity-based training, APRE stuff. So we were kind of like the trial runs for all that kind of stuff. And then we even started that nutrition type deal there. Janet Heitmeyer, she's at Georgia now, but she went from a strength coach to a dietitian, and so we kind of merged all that together. It was really, really cool.
You talking about Brian Mann, velocities, and the staff that was there. I've researched that a little bit. I've listened to Brian talk about it. Were you kind of there when they stumbled on the idea that they weren't hitting their cleans fast enough velocity-wise?
Yeah, 100%. I got there maybe a year after Brian did, and then him and I we had baseball together. But then, so he started doing all that. We had Tendo units from Sornex way back when. He's so good at all that data, and he was able to bring all that data to us. But yeah, we were going way too slow on some of our dynamic type movements, which then once we started actually hitting those speeds better, we were able to kind of see the vertical jumps go up and then speeds increases and those type things. Fun times. It was some good times.
I think just listening to it would have been an amazing time. And on top of that, when you started discovering that your speeds were too slow, did you ever hit a point where your speeds were too fast?
No, because we kind of cycled through the speeds as we went. And then we did a lot of, B-Man was real smart with us. We did a lot of our in-season. We did everything off of how hard the game was, if it was a travel weekend, how long the game was, like if we went into overtime or anything like that. So when we would come in on Sundays, we would box squat and do some different dynamic type movements like that. But all of our speeds would depend on how that game week was going into the next week. And I've kind of tried to do that throughout all the schools we've been to. Even if I didn't have the Tendo units, I'll kind of arrange what I want kids to hit, so it kind of mimics that at least. So not able to have Tendos everywhere, especially at the high school level. I'm trying to, but able to do some of that stuff. Whereas, hey, we just played a really hard game, or we got a really hard game coming up. Let's go lighter, more dynamic, more explosive. We've got an easier game, home game. Let's go a little bit heavier this week going into the game type of deal.
Now, what era was that? Was that the Chase Kaufman era when KU was starting to come on? And
yeah, we had some really good fights against those guys. Yes, so my first year there, Brad Smith was our quarterback. That was his senior year. And then it was Chase Daniel, who was the main quarterback then. And then Blaine Gabbert was kind of at the end of when I was there. And then I kind of left after about that 5-year mark.
So you got to see the height of the Missouri run.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we were really, really good around that time. We had a lot of really good guys, a lot of good guys that went to the league. between the football staff and the athletic performance staff, we worked really, really well together. Like I said, it was a fun time because we really started kind of taking off during that time frame, and it was nice too. Because it's not really what they do nowadays, but we actually we did all of the sports except basketball. Basketball was over in another weight room, but each football assistant strength coach, we had two to three other sports that we would work, and we worked a lot of them together, and it was a very inclusive type deal with all of us together instead of you've got this strength coach just for this sport and that one just for that one. So, which is really awesome because you learn a lot more and you learn what other people are doing with their sport and you talk. We did weekly like training sessions on the floor. So we would all lift together and go over ideas and stuff. And around that time, me and Brian Man, B Man, we were really into powerlifting. So we were doing a lot of powerlifting movements and stuff like that. And then we brought a guy named Andrew Paul in. He eventually got certified physical therapist, and now he's with the crap. Who's he with? He's in the NBA. My mind just went blank, but he's in the NBA. So he was able to bring some ideas like that, and we merged them all really well together.
The powerlifting thing explains the article Brian Mann wrote for Elite FTS. I read that, and I have some questions on it because your name come up in that, and you was handling
Yep.
you was handling for him.
Right. Some of our other staff lifted with us, and they all did some powerlifting meets, but him and I were really big into powerlifting at that point. He was just a bencher. He wasn't a squatter or a deadlifter, so he was a little different that way. But he was just a bencher. I was a full meat guy, and then we took a lot of trips to Westside Barbell. So he was better friends than what I was. But we were friends with Tony Bellagone and some of those guys. So we would go stay with those guys. We would go out there as a staff too, like our whole staff would go out there and we would stay a couple days and train at some different facilities, going to conferences and stuff like that. So, but him and I were big into powerlifting during that time frame.
So we'll switch a little bit to Baylor, but Missouri Oklahoma started the fast paced offense and really explosive in terms of a timeline. Maybe that could be debatable, but they really sped everything up. And then Missouri came in. Missouri kind of followed suit. Missouri had a lot of explosive athletes while you were there, and the game sped up.
Yes.
The game sped up with them. But then you go to Baylor, and it just reached a whole nother level of speed.
Yeah.
So when you got to Baylor, what were some things that you guys implemented that just, as far as offensively, changed the Big 12 and turned it into just this score at will type conference?
Well, that was Coach Briles. Coach Briles he recruited great athletes. He was crazy as far as like he knew their track numbers, he knew what they could run. Like you could walk in and he could tell you how big you were. He could tell you what your squat maxes were. Like he just had a great eye for talent. That 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 was the initial start of everything. So it started with him. And then our staff there was really, really good. Coach Kaz, he was originally at Missouri back in the day, right before I got there. So that's kind of how that tie-in happened. Then he went to the Chiefs. He was an assistant there with the Chiefs for a while. That staff was really cool because Coach Kaz let us each have our own little area that we were good at, and then we would sit down at a staff meeting together and kind of come together with it. Andrew Altoff, he's with the Texans now. He did a lot of our sports science stuff, so GPS, sprint stuff, that type of stuff. Chris Roof, he's still there right now. He works with the track team. He's super good with sprinting and acceleration and deceleration mechanics and all those type things. So we had a really, really good staff over that 4 year period that we each kind of had our own specific thing, but we would bring it in together and mesh it all really well together to make sure our guys got exactly what they needed. And then at that point too, we had some good dietitians too, but we eventually hired Jen Heitmeyer over there too. So we kind of brought some of that Missouri back down to Baylor. So it was really, really cool. And then another cool thing we did too was we would do like an intern exchange. So during summers, we would have, 10 interns, something like that at both schools. Well, back then we would actually send them back forth for like a week so they could get some different experience at a different school and see some different things.
That's actually pretty cool to hear. The interconference rivalry is all you ever hear about, but the interconference pairing up and working together, that's a whole different level.
They were SEC at that point. So, well, kind of sort of with it that they were moving to the SEC and all that kind of stuff. But like I said, we were a big family kind of because you break staffs off and you start going different places and all. And also too, we wanted to give those interns a great time frame and learn more than just being in one place. So because there's so many different ways to do things and there's a bunch of different things that work. So we wanted to give them the best experience that we could.
Now we've talked the collegiate scene a little, and we'll probably get back there. But the one thing that stands out to me as I was doing all this research is you go from Heisman candidates to high school kids that may or may not be able to put on their clothes and get to school and all the things that come with high school athletes. How big of a change was that for you?
Huge, huge change. So when I decided to do it, we were up in Syracuse, and this is when kind of COVID happened. And up there, they shut down everything. Like it was bad, bad. It wasn't near like that in like South Carolina and Texas or whatever. But so I got to spend a bunch of time with the family. We did some programming for guys on online, send it to them, stuff like that. But there was no going to work. There was none of that. So my oldest boy, and I trained my younger too, but my oldest boy, we would literally lift and run all the time. Couldn't really do anything else. And at that point, I was like, man, what am I doing? I'm spending all of this time at work, and and I'm not seeing my family as much as what I wanted to. And then I knew my oldest boy was going to play college ball somewhere. He's a good little athlete, no, not little, 6'6", but he's a good athlete. And I knew he was going to go to college. And I was like, if he doesn't play for the college that I'm at, then I'll never get to see him play. So at that point, I decided first to try to find a job in the South, just to try to get away from that, from the COVID and all. And then second, see if I could find a high school job. And David Abernathy, he was able to kind of help me find one in the South Carolina area. Before I made the decision, I talked to Monty Sparkman and a couple other guys that had been in college for a while and then went to the high school. And they're like, "Oh, it's the same as just training athletes." No, it is not. No, it is not whatsoever. So, I'm used to 18 to 20, 24-year olds. They can focus. You can give them some directions within 30 seconds to a minute, and they can focus long enough. And then it's just a big difference. College, most of the time, most of those guys want to go to the NFL or they want to, excel at their sport. High school is way different. You got kids that are there because mom and dad want them to play. You got kids that are there because they want to hang out with their buddies. So the level of commitment is just different. And then once you get to that college type level, like the level of commitment about what you're putting into it is different too. It has taken me a while to bring myself where I can, communicate as well as what I need to, keep the groups disciplined and in line, but not make them also not want to be there too. You know what I mean? Because kids nowadays, they need the discipline, they need the order. The weight room is a great place to do it, but I also want them to have a good time. Like we play music, we'll do some finishers at the end for fun. I'll let them do some arm days and stuff like that. But I also want to make sure we're disciplined because that'll carry over to the field and the rest of their lives, especially if they're not getting it elsewhere.
Very few places teach kids that they are capable of doing hard things like the weight room.
100% on that. You are so right about that. And it can be hard and you can get through it and then you can do it the next time and it feels easier. And that's one of the funny things is in high school and college, when they're freshmen, they're like, this is so hard. And then by the time they get to be juniors and seniors, you're like, you guys are so easy on them now. It's like, no, we're doing the same thing we did back then. You're just accustomed to it and you know how to break through it. And the mental aspect of it isn't near as bad as what it was.
That was actually, in a roundabout way, the next question I had. So at the college level, you're getting a lot of kids in from all over the country that have different experiences in the weight room, some non-existent, some pretty good weight rooms they're coming from. So the progressions and regressions, setting up a pretty good protocol for your Devo groups. How much regression did you have to do, and then how many kids showed up, and you're like, you go to that group, you go to the better group. How did that look?
So we always, at most of the school I was at, we always kind of did the Joe Ken block zero type deal. We didn't do it as long as what he kind of does, but bring them in, body weight warm ups, body weight movements to begin with, plate warm ups type deal. A lot of the schools we did like a med ball 200. So they would take a med ball, we would do different drills with the med ball. And then even at the high school level, and I break it way further down at the high school level, but like everything is on a progression. And then if they get that movement, then we can move them on to the next movement. At the college level, we had different training groups. So, we had, depending on where we were at, we called them different things, but you had like a block zero, which was more of just body weight movements, making sure they can do the movements. Then they would go more for strength and those type things. So if the athlete progressed along fast enough and their form was good, strength level was good and all that, then we would progress them on. Here, at the high school level, I can't do that as much. I mean, you're in a room, kind of by 100 athletes by yourself type deal. So like We'll start with a goblet squat. We'll start with a body weight squat during the warm up. We'll do that for a couple weeks, even with my older athletes right now. So we'll do a goblet squat for the first couple weeks with like a heel elevated. Make sure everybody, because I haven't seen some of these kids all summer. We had a bunch of football guys. We had some of the other sports, but we didn't have all of them. So we'll kind of do like a goblet squat these next couple weeks. Then we'll go into a front squat for a couple weeks. Then we'll turn around and actually go into a box squat or a back squat. We're not even doing any kind of real Olympic movements right now. We're doing some med balls and some jumps and landings and stuff, but we're actually RDLing twice a week. Most groups I have right now are twice a week type groups. So we're doing 2 days of an RDL to work our hip hinge because I haven't seen these kids lift in a while. So I want to make sure we're doing that. That'll eventually turn into like a hang shrug, which will turn into a high pull, which will turn into like a complex. Then we'll go into the hang clean. Especially the high school, I've got, even if they're in season, you've got 19 to 20 weeks in the fall and 19 to 20 weeks in the spring. So you don't have to push the progression. You can slow cook everything and do it that way because they're going to get the triple extension. They're going to get stronger. They're going to get all those things. So I try to take it as slow as I can with that. And then if the room pretty much gets it, then we'll move on to a next exercise. But then I may have to go back and there may be a kid that, hey, it just doesn't look good yet. So let's stay at the goblet squat, or I've got some bear squats and stuff like that. Let's go do this, continue to clean up our form, and then we'll go. And then I've had some athletes that, we're in a squat, they're not pushing their hips back well enough, so I'll get them on a box squat for a week or two. I try to progress everybody together, but then individually, if I see a kid that just doesn't look right, technique is not where we want it at, then I take that one kid and kind of regress them back a little bit, or just keep them the same.
All right, so this is off script from what I had, but it kind of
Right.
it's something I've been working through in my head, and you're kind of hitting on some of the different points. So I think it's a good rabbit hole to go through. You've spent time at Westside, you spent time with Brian Mann, you spent time powerlifting, you spent time at the most explosive schools in the nation. I know if you're trying to improve, especially what I'm starting to see at the high school level, and you could tell me if I'm wrong, or you could tell me if there's something to it, but I'm starting to see that, through all the West Side studying and all the stuff I've done, it's find the mini max, improve the mini max, you improve their lift. Okay. I'm starting to wonder if at the high school level, there's a different way to go about this. So you obviously have twitchy athletes and you obviously have strength athletes. I've been talking about that a lot lately and people are probably tired of hearing it. But in saying that, I am not a speed athlete. It takes me way too long to lift a squat at 75%. So that's where my weakness is. What I've noticed is as I've improved that with me and my athletes, the max is going up.
Right.
Some of my strength kids are just the opposite. The stronger they get, the faster they are. It's a weird deal to watch. So I started wondering if the mini max isn't as important as it is improving the deficit. So I'm slow. I lift slow. So I need to find the exercises that help me lift faster to raise my ceiling. So I almost need to raise my floor, so I raise my ceiling. Some kids, you got to raise the ceiling so that the floor comes up to them. Does that make sense? Have you ever kind of thought about it that way, or am I down some crazy rabbit hole that doesn't even matter?
At the college level, we had guys that could move 80% and they would just blow it out of the water. Like, it'd be like a point 0.9, 1.0, and you're like, what in the hell? And then we've got other guys that, can max out the same as them, but they can't move the speeds as fast. At the high school level, though, man, I don't have the ability or the time or the coaching staff to be able to worry about that. So what I try to do is pair everything together with some type of landing or some type of dynamic lift that way. So we're kind of working both at the same time. And then, in a room full of what we have, you got 4 or 5 guys at a rack. You can't not have a couple extra accessory movements with them. And I've just kind of found that if I can work them both together, work something kind of heavy and then work something kind of fast, that it helps the athlete in the long run as is that way. I used to think that whatever your weakness is, because the whole West Side's work your weakness to get stronger. I think there's a fine line of that because what tends to happen is if this is my strength, but I don't work it anymore, well, then it's not really my strength anymore. And that's what I'm naturally good at. And that's going to help me continue to get better too. I just need to work some of the things that I have a deficit at to help that strength and continue to kind of push. So different way of saying it, but yeah, I kind of see what you're saying and I agree.
It's my room's a lot smaller than your room, so I'm getting to see things in a different little light. But it just started dawning on me the other day. It's we still lift heavy, and then we do a dynamic day.
Yep.
But it's just like all of our squats have been through the roof lately, and the only thing I can attribute it to was we learned how to get faster. And when we got
Yes.
yeah, and we started kind of looking at that point 0.6 on a squat. We do a lot of box squatting, so we started looking at 0.6 meters per second, and then we'll let them run that speed up, kind of like a Bondarchuk idea. And
Yep.
it's like, wait a second, there's something to this. We're not necessarily working the mini maxes. We're not going through and saying, okay, you're weak, out of the hole, let's do this. We're just
Right.
overall creating,
A stronger athlete.
yeah,
And one thing that I kind of think that, and it's gotten more popular now, but like sprint and recover from your sprint so that you can go full speed again. If you want to get faster and you want to run full speed, then you've got to run fast and you got to run full speed. So I think that was one thing we were really good at Missouri and at Baylor. And even when I was at Indiana, I had some really good guys there, Paul and John. But when we ran full speed, and then we got enough recovery to run full speed again. I think that's what too many, especially at the high school level, they don't have as much knowledge, so they're used to just crushing the guys, old school mentality and all that. But if you want to truly get somebody faster, more explosive, it can't be a long repetitive where they're just getting fatigued. So I think that's one thing. Like, I don't have the opportunity to run all the teams where I'm at, but that's why we do something dynamic and explosive with it, whether it be a jump, whether it be a med ball, but it's 2 to 3 reps in between. So it's got that true velocity type deal with it. And I think that helps out with the strength aspect. You go back and you look at sprinters. What do sprinters look like? They're yacked up, they're strong, they're explosive. Long cross country, doing something long and slow, they're thinner. It's two different energy systems. And I think, like you're saying, when you work something just truly dynamic and explosive with it, you're going to get that return from it.
we started hitting it with Tendo units, VBT. You were talking about catapult, utilizing technology to give you more perspective at both levels. We're kind of leaning towards the high school level right now, but what changed the game? What piece of technology did you get your hands on? You're like, okay, I see this totally different than I've ever seen it in the past.
The whole VBT is really got me since, like I said, we were early 2000s, we started using it at Missouri. And to see, because the kids think they're moving it fast, but they're not really. Like, as a coach's eye, when you've done it long enough, you can see if a kid's really moving the bar fast or not. But I got that super easy. It was a little slow type. So I think that has been a huge factor. And a lot of the schools, almost all the schools that I was at in college, we use VBT, especially for our older groups. I haven't had that yet at the high school level. I actually have a couple myself that I bring to the school, and we use at certain times and with certain athletes and certain groups. I've kind of started a business on my own on the side. That's probably because I've got about 4 or 5 years in the high school left, and then I can kind of retire. So I'm kind of going to open up my own training facility type deal. But all of the athletes I have, not on every lift, but we'll do VBT type training. And that helps them be more dynamic and more explosive instead of moving it so slow. I wish I had that now at the high school level, and I could do it at every single rack, or at least, I've got 24 platform racks. If I could do it at half of them, but I'm just not quite there yet. We got some iPads a little while back, trying to get more of those. Like I said, I've got 2 OVRs and I've got an E-Node. I had a Tendo for a while, but it was like 25 years old, so it kind of broke the other day on me. But I think that can change the weight room and change the kids' mindset, because boys always want to lift too heavy. They want to max out all the time. Girls think they're lifting heavy and they're not. They get it super easy and you're trying to tell them to go up. Oh, it's super hard. We're supposed to get 4 reps and you could have gotten 8 or 10. Like, we can go up to 2.5 type deal. And then I do personally, for the outside, the sprinting, the running, I love the catapult. So we've got 30 units where I'm at right now. Football paid for 20, soccer paid for 10, girls soccer paid for 10. And we kind of share back and forth depending on the year. We started the catapult back when we were at Baylor, right when it started kind of getting big. Andrew Altoff, like I said, he's with the Texans now. He was in charge of that area, along with Nelly, one of our other guys, and he's with the Falcons now. So we have some really good guys starting that. And then when I went to Indiana as the head guy, we get bought a bunch of catapults up there. I love the information it gives, and the guys love the numbers that it gives as far as what their speed was and all that kind of stuff. So there's like 75 metrics. I look at about 4 or 5 metrics, send it out to our staff, but I think that really helps. Now, I've been lucky, like when we were at Baylor, Coach Briles was really good about knowing the practice itself, having highs and lows during a practice. And then if they looked good for the day, he would call it. Like, if they had another 10 plays on the script, if they were moving fast and everything was hitting right, he would call it. Like, you didn't have to sit out there and have a 4 hour practice. And then here, my head coach here, his name's Kirk Martin. He's our athletic director here at the high school. He's really good with his practices too. Like, there's not an abundance of volume. There's ups and downs and highs and lows during the practices. So him and our defensive coordinator do a really good job of that, even without having to take all the data. I just kind of give them a heads up on things.
Talking about working with athletes, especially younger athletes, and then your future goals of working in a private, they don't know what they don't know. So using the technology that you're talking about, it's not like if a kid never races another kid, you can tell that kid he's fast, but he may or may not be fast until he stands next to another kid, and then he's like, "Oh man, that kid's faster." You don't get that advantage on a barbell,
right?
So having the VBT, you start showing them that was not as fast as what you thought it was, and you're not as fast as the kid on this rack. We need to get you up there to that speed. So yes, technology is probably one of the best tools that I've ran into at the high school level to help them understand what speeds things need to happen. You're not as fast as what you think you are.
And kids love to compete. So when you're putting them on that, and I hit a 2.1 and you hit a 2.2, that makes me want to compete harder to be able to get that 2.2 number like you did. I feel like back in the day, we just had more kids that just worked hard. Now they have to have a goal or they have to be competing the whole time and all that. So I think it's a great way to do that aspect of it too, so that, it becomes a competition at the rack. I bought a couple bear squat machines, the old school ones, and I'll hook the Tendo up to that. I've got 2 OVRs, but I'll hook it up to that, and our kids will do jumps from it. And then you'll sit there and they'll get into each other about, I hit a 2.1, you hit a 2.3, and they'll be yelling at each other. So I think the competitive aspect of it is really, really good too. We also have valved, so we'll do like flying tens and we'll do some stuff like that with the timing system outside. Not only does that allow them to run really fast, but it also, as soon as they go through, it gives you what they ran, so those kids can compete better that way too.
And when they start building on each other, and then you have the weight room building on the sprints and the sprints building on the weight room, you just start this cycle of improvement all the time.
Correct.
Yeah, the competition drives everything.
Now, I've seen you have some of the OVR, correct?
Yes, I do.
Do you have their new timing system or not?
I do not. I've been tucking a little bit of money away. I got to see it at the coaches clinic in Memphis, and I went through it with Michael Fahey, and he showed me all the different elements of it, and it's definitely in the budget. I'm just not quite there yet. So and to say that they're not even expensive. It's just when you're budgeting everything else. And
I know, yeah. The OVR jump though, you like those?
Yes, I do. Okay. We use it for multiple things. We'll use it a lot for ground contact times on hurdle hops. I
saw that.
Yeah, I built some hurdle hops from some Amazon pieces, and we'll use them a lot there. We'll use them in height. We'll use them in broad. We'll set it on RSI mode for a lot of depth jumps, so we can see ground contact time and we can see the vertical. And then that way I start learning what kind of athlete I'm dealing with. So to me, and I may be totally off on this, but if you have fast ground contact times from a low box, I think you have a more twitchy athlete. If you have fast ground contact times from a high box, I think you have a more strength athlete. So now I can start looking at, okay, what kind of athlete am I dealing at? What should I expect? How do I program when we're peaking a little bit different? Things like that. But that could be something that I've just put in my head, and it may not even be factual. It's just something I think I see.
Well, I don't know about the high, whatever, like you were talking about, but I just know the twitchier athletes, when they're jumping, they don't have to dip down quite as far. Whereas more of a strength, just, a stronger guy, but not very explosive, you'll see like a dip on a vertical jump. They have to really get down to use that strength to be able to get up to begin with. So I've done some of the contact time, but I haven't done as much now. Like I said, it's a lot harder here because I'm by myself, and I got rooms full of 100 athletes. So we have vert mats, and we do vert mats weekly to kind of see where we're at and how it's going. And I'm kind of anxious to compare because I've got some of my athletes doing the jumps on the bear squat now for speed. So I'm anxious to see how that carries over to the vert mat when they actually start testing on the vert mat again. So because you got a weighted deal, and I got bands on the bear squat with the Tendo, and I'm trying to make them hit a speed. Kind of saw some stuff Mark Hoover was doing. I really like his stuff a lot too. I know him, but so I've been kind of doing some of that. So I'm kind of anxious to see if that carries over to the vert mat or not.
I've got to break down and buy the timers. We do a lot of resisted stuff that I base on time, whether
Yeah.
that be the resisted triple broad jump or that be resisted accelerations. It's all based on time. And I had another set of timers, and we had this cur dog just show up at the house. I don't know where it come from. Beautiful dog, puppy. Well, I got to hold the boys left the timers in the barn because that's what they were used to doing. And this dog dragged them timers out and wrecked them. So I've got
You're a little upset, huh? You're a little upset. Yeah.
yeah, that dog had to find another place to live. But it's one of those deals where we live, we just get an influx of either runaways or dump dogs. And
I got you.
she was an amazing dog. And if you've ever been around curs, I mean, there's no back down in them. I mean, that's what old Yeller was. That's what old Yeller was, So they'll fight a pair, but they'll also chew up timers. So
right, yeah, good and bad.
yeah. Going through your bio, you've seen some stops. You've probably at some points in your lives you never even unpacked all of your boxes. So
Yeah.
the fear of the unknown and tackling a career that has so many ups and downs. How have you been able to manage that?
My wife mainly. She's the one that, when we were time to move, she was getting everything ready to go, and she was taking care of everything. And then just faith in God about what's going to happen next. I've only been fired once in my career, so that's pretty good, I imagine. But yeah, it's especially in college, you're moving, you're not staying very long. The fear of getting fired if you don't have a good year, or like I was very blessed that I had job opportunities at the right time, at the right place to kind of I'm not going to say move up, but build my career, build my knowledge, and build my where I wanted to be at the time type of deal. So, the thing is when you're young, strength and conditioning, whatever else, you want to be the head, you want to be the guy, you know what I mean? And I was the guy twice in my career at the college level. And sometimes it's not all you think it's going to be. And sometimes it's longer hours than what you thought it was going to be, a lot more stress. I'll say this. I was the best assistant that there ever was. I was a good head guy, but man, you tell me what you need me to do, and I'll take care of that thing because I'm very disciplined and organized and detailed. But at the college level, like, all these young guys, what they want to be a head guy, guys and girls, they want to be head of this, head of that. But it comes with a lot. It comes with a whole lot. After the Indiana, because I got fired from Indiana, after I got fired, I found an assistant job at Syracuse, and I was perfectly fine with being an assistant again because I could help my head guy look for issues that was going to go on and all those type things. So another thing is just being happy where you're at the time. No matter where you're at, you're going to have good points and bad points at that school. There's going to be things you really like and things you don't like. The people you work with, you're going to have some good times and some bad times, your ups or downs with them. But just kind of enjoy where you're at, learn where you're at, and then try to stay to school for a couple years at least. So that way you can kind of see if your programming is working. These guys that go someplace for 6 months or a year and they leave, and then did your program really work? Or did you just implement some new stuff? And for you to say your program really worked, that's why, like, my stop in Missouri was 5 years. My stop at Baylor was 4 years. So, we were able to kind of see programming and changes and implementation, and we could kind of, view our programming a little bit better that way.
I've got a couple notes in there, so
Okay, go ahead.
I'll tackle the first one first. When I was young, I get what you're saying. When I was young, I was in construction. I worked with some old timers, and yeah, you're young. You want to be the foreman. You want to tell everybody what to do. You want to be the guy. And I was working with an older guy, and he said, kid, I spent my whole life being number two, and I was okay with that. He said, I made just as much money as the number one guy. I had half the responsibilities. I wasn't on the hook for when things went wrong. He said, sometimes being number two isn't necessarily the worst thing you can be.
100% agree with that. And, you know, and it's everywhere though. Everybody's like, well, how come you don't want to be a head football coach? I like being a defensive coordinator. Why do I need to be a head football coach? Or I like coaching linebackers. If I ended up doing that, then I may not be able to do what I really want to do, type of thing.
And you can be number one in your number two spot, right? You can be the
100%.
best number two in the nation.
Yep. Just, MLK, the whole street sweeper. That's kind of my whole thing is no matter what you are, you need to be the best you can be at it at all times, whether it be, third string linebacker or, for these high school kids, you're on, B team freshman squad or whatever it may be. But as long as you are the best as what you can be, that's all God cares about. And that's all that you need to care about. So, and then continue to improve because everybody has their own role. Some people are really good at some things, and some people probably shouldn't be where they're at. You know what I mean? So,
you talked about being somewhere long enough to see your ideas come to fruition and know if they're working or not. And you hit on that 2-year mark. I really think that I've noticed that in athletes. It's like you kind of see the culmination of all the work they've done, but usually it takes 2 years to see that. And maybe I'm just in a situation where kids are maturing. You get them as a freshman. Well, as a junior, they're just going to be a bigger, faster. I don't know if it's programming or if it's maturity, but there's something about that 2-year mark that you kind of mentioned there that I do think actually carries weight. I think there is a huge difference being somewhere a couple years and then seeing the development of those athletes.
I would agree with that. So I'm going into year 3 here, and the end of last year, summertime, like I just look around the room, I'm like, man, they actually know how to hang clean now, or that our depth on squad is more consistent. Not saying it's great, because there's never with kids this age, their body changes so much. They may look like a great athlete 1 week. For 2 weeks, they look horrible, and then all of a sudden they look great again. Well, they've grown up 2 inches or whatever. So, but to be able to look and see, and you're like, man, you look at the whole room itself, and you're like, okay, they're actually getting their elbows through on their cleans now. That looks way better. Sitting their hips back better. Their ground contact time. They're not staying on the ground as long as what they used to. Like all of those things you can kind of see after that 2-year mark because they get to know you, you get to know them, and they're just maturing a little bit. So I would agree with that. And then you know how it is too, because your juniors and your seniors start then helping your freshmen out, and it helps them get the understanding of everything a lot quicker instead of no one knows what you're doing and no one understands it really well. So you've got more coaches now that can help the younger kids out.
And that is a good point. I know we rely heavily on some of our college guys to come back in the summer and teach sprinting. They have a good understanding of it. They relate. Yep. They relate to the kids better. They can. I'm not going to go out there and run fast, but these kids are blazing. So then those other kids are like,
Yep.
"What are you doing?" Well, if I went out there and run, nobody'd ask me what I was doing. So yeah, it definitely helps. The other thing is what I've noticed is you'll look around the room, you'll be like, "Oh man, Johnny, he's getting big."
Yeah.
And then he'll grow, and then he won't look big anymore. So you got to fight those ups and downs as well. Like you know, it's a process.
Well, especially and it happened in college because Brian Mann did some research and he's talked about it before. But you get a linebacker come in and he ends up moving down to a D lineman. His vertical when he comes in is a 30, and now he's gained 40 pounds and his vertical's a 28. Well, he's still gotten better and he's way more explosive because he's gained 40 pounds, even though his vertical jump went down. So I see that a lot at the high school level too. We got these big kids that they may end up gaining 20, 30 pounds and their vertical jump is staying consistent the whole time. And I'm like, dude, you've gotten so much better. And like, well, my vertical jump's not any better. Imagine 2 years ago, if I'd have put a 40-pound vest on you, you wouldn't have hit that same vertical jump. So yeah, these kids at this age, their bodies are just changing so much and all.
I have this conversation with athletes on the bench press. So let's say we send them into football season and they're a little heavy, knowing that they're going to get it run off of them. So we send a kid into football season, he's 200 pounds. Let's say he's benching 275. Well, at the end of the season, now he's ran his butt off and he's 185 and he's benching 275. Well, my bench ain't went up.
Right.
Well, your leverage has changed incredibly because you've lost all that weight. You're actually stronger than you think you are, but now your leverages are different. It's a process in trying to get those kids to understand just because your numbers isn't moving, your body's doing things the whole time that doesn't necessarily mean you're staying the same?
I think it was Brandon Lilly, but Brandon Lilly always talked about too, or it might have been Jim Windler, I can't remember, but they always talked about like, even if you hit the same number, does it look better than before? So my squat depth was better when my bench, I kept my elbows in better. The speed was a little bit better. It may still be your max, but if the technique and if that all of that looks better, well, then you have gotten better too. The weight on the bar isn't gone up, but now you have a better base to be able to train off of from there even.
We had touched on it a little bit earlier on speed, but keeping kids fast, what does that take? Baylor did a great job of preserving speed all the way through the season. So you can take some of these ideas to the high school level. I know Art Bridle spent a ton of time at the high school level.
Yeah.
What did he understand, and what should we understand about keeping kids fast throughout the course of the season?
Well, don't over fatigue them. First off, like that's what a lot of people do too much. Your practices are too long, too much volume during practices. The kids can't get off their feet. And then we figured out at Baylor too, because we did dexes and all those things during the season. We started feeding them more. The guys started eating more, and their body fats actually went down, and their recovery went up because they were not overeating, but they were actually eating what they needed to eat within a season. And I think that's one thing at the high school level that the kids just don't do a good enough job of, is making sure they've got enough fuel throughout the day and taking care of their bodies as well as what they should. I tried to bring kind of what the things that we did at the college level to the high school level. So we do weekly nutrition talks, put everything on the board. We'll go over it. I'll quiz them later in the week. And it doesn't take very long. And that's what everybody doesn't understand. Like they want to talk 10, 15 minutes to kids on nutrition or whatever it may be, real quick, and then just continue to quiz them as the week goes along so they get the idea and they understand it. Then you can go in more into depth. But I think that's one thing that the high school kids just don't get is, if you want to run fast and you want to be fast and you want to play well and you want to be strong, if you don't have the calories and the right calories in your body to be able to do it, you're not going to be able to perform like you're supposed to. And if you're not going to bed till 2 a.m. every day. And then another thing we always did was we made sure we get sprint work in, even in season. Looking at the catapult data, there's a lot of times that guys don't get up to full speed during a game. It depends on the game, depending on the offense you play, defense you play. Unless a guy hits a long go route or something, you may not hit top speed. I got a running back, and we're running in between the tackles the whole time. He's never going to hit full speed unless something just magically breaks open and he goes. So we always, at least on Tuesdays, we'll do some flying 10 work and we'll do some true full speed agility work at the beginning of our practice, so that we'll do a good dynamic warm up, work some speed technique, high knees, those type things. Then they'll actually get a couple reps on just 5-10-5. Doesn't take very long. Got the whole team out there. Offensive line runs out. They get on the 10. You get a 5-10-5. They finish through. Then the next group comes out, and then we'll get a flying 10. Or we've talked our coaches into, instead of the whole at the end of practice, let's run gassers or half gassers. I'm like, Coach, why don't we sprint them as hard as they can? Let them run a cross field. Then we can walk back for recovery, and then they can run another one, type of thing. So I think that has helped, looking at the catapult data with our speed tremendously, is being able to do those two things where you're not just fatiguing the athlete.
I think you're onto something there, and I think Louis Simmons was onto something as well. Is what I noticed was you can use the weight room for conditioning too. The way Louis would set up his dynamic day, you find that right number in VBT where that last rep is a struggle and a push.
Yep.
But now you can start specifically training for the sport that you want to play as far as conditioning goes.
Right.
The sprint, you're going to build the capacities you need in a way better scenario than just running mindlessly. Kids don't seem to respond to that very well either. So yeah,
no,
I'm with you on that for sure.
And if you do that, the kids don't compete. That's another thing. If you're running a half gasser or a gasser, unless you're making them make a time, and even that, they're still. But if you tell the guys, I want you to run hard as you can across the field, and then we're going to walk back for recovery, they'll go at each other and they'll freaking compete. So, and then like you said too, you can use the weight room for, getting a good training base too, and a good aerobic base and a good metabolic type base. So like with some of my basketballs now, we're finishing with a finisher every day. So we make sure we got plenty of recovery for our heavier lifts and the more dynamic lifts. But then I'll get about 5 or 6 exercises together, whether it be some jump rope, some balance stuff, some ab work, some rotational stuff, some med ball stuff. And we'll do that as a finisher at the end, just to be kind of like a metabolic type deal for them to kind of get in shape. Because Basketball, you run them down the court the whole time. So yes, you got to be fast, but you got to have some kind of base in there too.
We started utilizing time sets a little better, and we actually started with our 200 athletes,
Oh,
looking at
nice.
looking at time under tension and
Yep,
how that would carry over to the race, and then like Louis had the dynamic setup, 7 seconds on, 40 seconds off. So now you're with VBT was a game changer for high school athletes because now
yep.
you know the effort that's being perceived. Like you said, if when you're running gassers, even if you're timing it, your faster athletes are only going to run.
As fast as the time is.
Yeah, and if they're in a group with some slow guys, well,
Yep,
they just have to be faster than the slow guy. They don't have to be the fastest one on the field.
correct. Yep.
I was reading something you had wrote, and it was I thought it was pretty cool. You said for your athletes, you eat breakfast, squat heavy, and run fast. So, what are you doing in the weight room to create the run fast portion?
So I stole that from Coach Kaz. We had talked about that at Baylor some, and then my first day at Indiana when I was there, I had some reporter ask me, and that was first thing I popped off type deal. So in the weight room, so you're talking about speed in the weight room.
Creating speed on the field through the weight room. What modalities have you found that carry over well, like a deadlift for acceleration or box squat for top speed? What do you do to build them together?
We'll do a lot of I like the Olympic lifts for the acceleration part of it. So we'll do hang cleans with most of our sports. I try to keep it light until we try to test because we go back to that hole was too heavy at Missouri. So I won't let them go very heavy, even during training until we get to where we kind of peak and we get a new number. I won't bring them past about 85%. There may be one week in there we kind of hit a single at a 90 just so we can get accustomed to the weight, but I won't let them go past that like 85% range. That way they actually are being dynamic and explosive and their form actually stays well enough too so that they're moving it as fast as we can. And then we do a lot of plyometric work. We do box jumps. I do a lot of like med ball, broad jumps out. I made kind of two walls in the weight room so that we can do some med ball, broad jump between the legs, throw it out. So we're working great hip extension. And then I've also added, it's a thick band. I'll try to think of the name of it in a minute. I got it from Kevin Yoxall. He works at Dynamic Fitness, but I attach it to the rack itself. We can do broad jumps with it. I get them in there, and I make them do sprint work in it. Now, I know they're not moving, so they're not getting as much force through the hamstrings, but the turnover and the carryover and the arm action is what I'm trying to really get from it. Because, like I said, I don't have courts that I can use all the time. If it's time, it takes too long for me where I'm at to go get to the actual track or get to the actual football field. And then a lot of times we've got other sports using those anyway. So I'll get them in there and we'll do like 3 sets of 10-second sprints as fast as they can during their warm up so that they are getting that type of turnover and that carryover. And I think that's helped a ton.
The band work you were talking about in there, we do something very similar. I think it's a huge benefit, and I almost think as a benefit more so than the resistance is the ability to stabilize once they hit the ground because that band will jerk them off their
Correct.
feet.
Yep.
I Is that something you see with them?
Yes, I like it for the deceleration fact, and they've got to stabilize. We'll do shuffles with it too. First couple of weeks, we'll do a slow shuffle out, slow shuffle back in, working more strength. Then we'll make them go fast out, slow back in, where they're having to decel and accelerate against a band. We do a ton of stuff with those bands, especially at this level. And then I'm actually in the process of getting some glute ham rollers for half of our racks. So with those, we're going to do some good hamstring work. You could do like a glute ham runner with it. We'll do. And then I love the lateral aspect, the lateral lunge aspect that you can do with those glute ham rollers. But yeah, the bands are amazing, especially at this age with the kids, because space wise, we don't always have the space to do things, number of athletes, and I can literally do a great warm up at the rack and get everything I kind of need done without having to try to take them. Because you know how it is in high school, you've only got your period may be like 57 minutes, but it's 5 minutes at the beginning, 5 or 10 minutes at the end for them to change. So you're talking, you got 40 minutes. Now, if I'm trying to take athletes in and out of a weight room the whole time, that's a lot. My other high school was a little bit better. We were on a four, so we were on a block, so we only had four classes, and the track was literally like right next to us. So we would do a dynamic warm up with most of our teams, do a falling start, do like a shuffle to an acceleration. Then we would bring them in the weight room, or I've even coupled it some and did a movement, and then you would go to the track and get a sprint and come back. But it all depends on how many athletes you have and the setup of everything, your weight room to where everything else is too.
On those bands, do you flip them and you do instead of resisted, you do assisted on your broad jump and let the band pull them into the broad jump?
I have not done much of that yet, and we would have to actually take them off the rack for them to be able to do it that way, just the way it's set up. I do a lot more resisted broad jumps, and then behind that, come back with something that's unassisted. So whether we're sprinting or not, like sprinting, jumps, anything like that, I'll normally do a resisted and then come right back behind it with a, just more of a normal, whatever it may be. So, but no, I have not done a whole lot of that yet.
We had stumbled onto that with some throwers, and that's where that come from because we wanted to get throwers faster across the ring.
Yeah.
We started using the bands to pull them through the ring. And
You like that?
Yeah, I did. I think what I think was I had, if you get into, Dane Miller's idea of the three types of athletes, which kind of comes from Bondarchuk, but I had a kid that was probably a type 1 and very, very analytical, and he would never just open up and get across the ring because he had to hit this step here and he had to have his hip loaded here.
Yep.
And so we started doing that with him, and we started really exploding him across the ring. And I think that helped him just free up and go.
Yeah.
Now, did we see a huge increase in his broad jump? I think his broad jump went up. I don't know how far down this neurological pathway I am where, guys say, well, if you overspeed it, you'll break down this barrier and they'll go further. That may be true. I don't know that I have seen that, but
yeah.
I just knew I wanted him faster across the ring, and that was the easiest way to get there.
I think all of that stuff works, but I think sometimes it doesn't work as much as what we all think it does. You know what I mean? So like, I'll do the assisted vertical jumps now and then pair that with a box jump or a vertical jump and then some kind of heavier type pull. And just like you said, I think it helps, but I don't know. It's not going to all of a sudden, because I did this, I'm going to go from a 30 to a 36-inch vertical. Some people I don't think any of that works like that. But I think that last little bit of those little bitty numbers of those guys that, you're right there, but you need to get just a little bit more. I think it gives you this much. I don't think it gives you this much type of thing. So
I've tried the banded verticals when a kid gets stuck, and I'm like you. It might get a little, it might get a tenth. I don't know what I'm doing wrong.
Right.
When I watch these other guys and they talk about it, they're seeing results. I'm not. I've almost found that if I want to get a kid's vertical jump higher, I just get his ground contact time faster.
That are more resisted. So,
yeah.
but I've messed around with before, either holding chain or holding dumbbells on a vert mat, go down for the eccentric, drop them, and then jump. I've done those for some cycles, and I think those worked really well.
We would do that. I like the chains because what we started doing was we would do a depth jump. So we would get them on a box. They would hold the chains so that when they stepped off, the chains would pull them into the ground, but they could drop them and then come out. I thought we saw some benefits there. Bands too. They'd hold on to the bands, let the bands pull them in the ground a little harder. We focused on that some.
At the end of the day, I go back to it. Consistency is going to get you better than anything. You can have a great program, and if the kids aren't following it right, they're not going to get that much better. You can have just a decent program, and the kids are putting in good, consistent effort and all that kind of stuff, and they're going to get a ton better. I mean, it's not always the program. It's a lot of time it's the environment too. Like the whole times when like me and Brian Mann and our staffs would go to Westside Barbell, don't get me wrong, they have some great training programs, but when you've got that many guys that are that good, it just makes a huge difference. I tell all of our high school kids that go to college, I'm like, when you walk in, everybody is going to look like you. Like everybody's your max, that senior is going to be doing that for reps. So just walking into an environment like that where everybody looks the same, all your tight ends are 6'5", all your offensive linemen are 300 pounds and can move. That consistency of training with all them is going to take you way more than you doing some fancy program or whatever it may be. So sometimes it is just about hard work and consistency.
Have you noticed that maturity plays a role in there too? Like your junior seniors are going to go at each other way harder than your freshmen. Your freshmen still don't even know how to talk to each other in a way that, that would even drive competition.
100%. Like, I was walking around the room, and this is my powerlifting group yesterday. And I've got 3 older kids one's a junior and 2 are going to be seniors. And the way they were pushing each other and talking to each other is so much different than I had like 3 freshmen on the other side of the room. and they're just babies. They don't know, they don't understand, and then by the time you get to be that senior, you got certain groups that just really go at it. But then it's the same thing when they go to college. They walk in that first door and they're just babies again. So, but then the time they get into the training for a year or two, they understand it. They understand how their body works and how they need to recover better. Then you start seeing these big improvements. Or it's that guy that, kind of messes around his first year or two, and now it's become his junior year, whether in high school or college. And you're like, oh, I just got to start getting serious. And you see that switch kind of go, and now they're consistent with it, consistent with their nutrition, consistent with going to bed on time. Even if they don't feel like lifting that day, they still come in and put out great effort and do what they're supposed to do. And they may even stay and get some extra recovery. You know what I mean? Because you don't always feel like it. You can say what you want. You don't always feel like training. You don't always feel like going to work, but the consistency of doing it over and over again is going to get you way far and above and beyond.
The time factor starts coming in there as well. I think juniors start realizing, hey, this clock's winding down on me fast.
Yeah.
I better figure out the next level, or this is going to be over before I'm ready for it to be over.
Right. Yep. And that's high school and college. High school kid wants to go to college and play, doesn't have very many scholarships yet, and he's like, "Oh, I need to tighten this thing up some," And the college kid, he's either not playing or he just figures out, man, if I want to make it to the next level or I want to finish this thing right, I've got to start eating better. I've got to start going to bed on time and not, out all night or playing video games. So yeah, and it's just the brain maturity too. And we were talking about that earlier, but I get 12, 14-year-olds, and it's just way different than talking to an 18-year-old, way different, and it's the same in college. Most of the time you get an 18-year-old in college and then you're talking to a 22 or 23-year-old. There's differences in the brain and the maturity and, experiences and all that kind of stuff.
I know you see at the college level, you might probably see it more so at the high school level, but athletes want to play. They want to play their sports. They want to get on the field. They want to do what they want to do as far as that goes. But they don't necessarily want to be in the weight room. So you got to show them results somewhat quickly to get them to buy in, or efficiently so that they'll show up. Learning what improvements need to be made the quickest, or what improvements matter. Are they different at the high school level than they are at the college level?
No, because as long as they're seeing improvement on the field and you can give them a couple numbers in the weight room, whether it be catapult, whether it be VBT, whether it be, a jump mat, as long as you can give them some of those numbers and they're playing better, it's the same. It's just how you go about doing it sometimes, because you got such large groups versus smaller groups and more coaches versus less coaches. Yeah, it's like you said, you want them to improve and you want to see it quickly. And I think that some of those numbers through the VBT and the catapult, I think those are the quickest ways to show them. You know what I mean? Instead of just, because when you get a new athlete at it, you ain't gonna max them out to begin with, right? So for them to see, well, I used to bench this, but now I'm only benching this. Well, but your form and technique's better. But if you can do things on a jump mat or a VBT or a timing system, and they're seeing those results right away, I think that's probably the fastest way for them to actually put everything into the weight room.
I've kept you on here a little while now, and I know you got to open the weight room and do some stuff on your Saturday, so I won't keep you all morning, but we'll hit a couple more things, and then hopefully you can enjoy your day. I read an article you did on tempering, and I love tempering, and we've had podcasts about tempering. I think it's when that got introduced, I think it was a game changer, and Baylor may have been on the forefront of that.
Yes, we were.
So when you bring an idea like this to the staff or to the head coach, and you're like, look, we're going to lay these big, heavy rollers on these guys, and it's going to work. I promise. It's going to work. How did that conversation go down?
Actually, it was kind of easy because I'm friends with Donnie. So Donnie and I have known each other for a long time. When we were at Baylor, he made a comment about college training and the times that they train and all this kind of stuff online. And I'm like, Donnie, you don't know about all that until you've actually been in the collegiate level and seen the time constraints that the guys have, going to class, rehab, like watching film and all that. So I was like, why don't you just come to Baylor and hang out and you can freaking watch? So he came and hung out, stayed at my house for a week. and he helped us coach. So we got Donnie Thompson, there all day. He's showing the voodoo stuff. He's showing the tempering. Um, Back then, he didn't even have the bow ties done. But what we ended up doing for some of the athletes was just taking bands, twisting them, and putting them around the shoulders. So he came in and showed all that stuff to our staff, the athletic training staff, because I had known about the tempering. So I had bought a couple of it and had a couple of it around. But he was actually there when we started like implementing it at first. So that makes it a little bit easier when the guy that started it is actually there with you and working with you, especially with his credentials of what all he's done. So it was way easier that way. And then we kind of did it to begin with, and we would just do recovery circuits at the end of our training session. So we would do a tempering station, foam rolling station because we just didn't have enough at the time because we were just kind of starting out. We would do like a band stretch station. We would do some hip mobility type stuff, and we would just kind of rotate him through the room to do that. Then everywhere else I've been, so he came to me when I was in Indiana. He came to me when I was at Syracuse, and the same thing. He would do like a little clinic type deal to show our athletic trainers what it was, show our staff what it was, and then kids just really buy into it once they feel it. And it's crazy. First time I did, he put like a 221 on my calves, and I was like, "What in the hell are you doing, man?" But to feel it and to be able to feel better from it, get your central nervous system firing, tissue quality better. So even now at the high school level, I've got two in my weight room. I can't do it all myself, but the guys will do some to each other, and then my guys I really need with like hamstrings and stuff. I'll put two of them on them for a while, and then I'll come back and temper them. So we even do it at the level that I'm at right now, just not quite to the extent I did when we were in college. Love it though. It's such a great deal.
Donnie is amazing about it, and I would imagine so. That's like almost like having a child. When he came up with that idea, that's like watching your child develop. You're very, very proud of it. And
Yeah,
I'll message him, and he'll always get right back with me and
correct.
try
Yep.
this, or no, you're on the right track. Or if I post a video on YouTube, he'll take a look at it, and you might be able to do this to get better, or I like that idea. Or but I think he's helped more people than he will ever know he helped in the ankles
Yes.
and then in the tempering. So
Yep.
yes, but now that's further down the line. That's a modality that's probably a little further down the line. The cheap ones are the most efficient first, right? So how do
Yes.
you get
Well,
your athletes to sleep, eat, hydrate, and show up ready to go?
the weekly nutrition talks is a big deal that we do. And like I said, I don't do it very long. I do it long enough to give them the information, and then I quiz them back when they come in, and then I kind of build off of that. So like this week we went over what's a fat, what's a carb, and what's a protein. And the funny thing is, right now in some of the freshman classes, they're going over the exact same thing. So what they just learned in class for an hour, I rehashed within like 30 seconds. I put that out online, so Twitter and Instagram. So I'll make sure I put weekly things out like that so those kids are seeing it. But I will. I'll ask them. I'll quiz them. We're walking through a hallway. Hey, what'd you have for lunch? So I try to do that a lot. That helps out a ton. If I've got athletes that have real, I need to gain weight, I need to lose weight, then we get a little bit more in depth with it. But one thing we found in college was you telling an athlete what to eat all the time really doesn't work, because what happens when you tell them to eat rice and chicken, and they go out with their boys and they go to a restaurant and there's no rice and there's no chicken, there's hamburgers. So if you can educate them better on how to do it, then you're able to kind of see that transformation and they kind of make better decisions. Another thing we did the other day was great example. Our starting safety, he's a stud. He's got about 10 scholarship offers already, in shape. He always has higher velocities, always has higher numbers on catapult data. Go to him at the end of practice, man. How you feeling? Everything good? Coach, man, I don't know. I feel tired. I feel sluggish. I feel like I'm out of shape. You are not out of shape. You're not out of shape right now. We're 3 weeks into camp. You trained all summer. There's no way you're out of shape. I said, well, how was your eating yesterday or that day? Did you eat? Blah, blah, blah. Oh, I just didn't have time for breakfast. I'm like, come on now. You know to eat breakfast. So the next morning, made sure he had some breakfast. His catapult numbers that next day were higher than the days before, but he felt way better. He's like, Coach, man, everything felt easy today. I felt good. Like, and then I told him the day after, I was like, well, your speed was faster, your distance was more, and you had more sprint yardage. Three big metrics were up, but you felt way easier with it. So then I just turned around and talked to all the groups about that and gave that same example. Like, if you don't put fuel in your car, it's not going to go anywhere, and everything feels harder. If you don't have enough carbs, your brain's not going to function as well. So now, whatever it is seems harder than what it really is. And that could even be in class. Like, I can't remember anything. Well, you haven't eaten anything all day, or all you've had Skittles, So, or we get a guy that cramps, and I'll get into him a little bit. So, what did you have today? And then kind of not make an example, but we'll talk about that in front of the group as long as the kid's okay with it. Being like, great example. He had one little serving of whatever at lunch, but didn't eat the rest of the day, and now he cramped practice. So we kind of talk about it that way.
I use this example a lot. I live in the country. You're down in Texas. Maybe you can relate. Us as a nation would starve if we treated our food supply the way we treat our athletes, or our athletes responded that way. You know what I mean? Like if you ran
Yeah,
your cows all day and just ran them from pasture to pasture and didn't give them time to stop and eat and didn't grade them,
correct.
they'd be
Yep.
skin and bones and there would be nothing to butcher. If you planted your crops and you didn't fertilize them, our crop yields would be half of what they are.
Yep.
But athletes, it just seems like it takes so much education to get them to understand that, to get their parents to understand that, to get the school system to understand that. I
Yep.
don't know why it's so difficult, but it seems to be.
Which was really cool the last couple of years. So we do at the end of the spring, we do a freshman incoming meeting. And then at the beginning of the fall, we do a full football meeting. And it's got the kids and the parents there. I go over all that with them. So I show them some data, show them some like our vert jumps and what it is, talk to them about in season. And then, I actually gave that whole Baylor deal about we fed our athletes more, body fats went down, felt better. So I actually talked to them about, hey, you need to help your kids because they're not adults yet. Like, make sure they have some type of breakfast. I don't care if it's a Pop Tart. Make sure they have something before they go out the door. Get them to put some extra trail mix or snacks or bagels or something in their bag, Gatorade bar, whatever it may be. Talk to the kids about it too. But I literally tell the parents this too. And I give them the athletic performance Twitter and Instagram so they can see. And hopefully that way they can, get their kids moving in the right direction a little bit quicker with that too. Because they're kids. If you're a good parent, you're still parenting your kid in high school. You know what I mean? So you've got to be on top of them, making sure they're getting what they need to get.
That's I try to make a big deal of it when athletes show up to the gym with food. It's like, okay, we're gaining ground. You're not getting yourself away from the table very far.
Yep.
So let's get your food in and let's get the lifting. It's a big deal.
I'm always fine with an athlete like coming into the weight room with food. Now, don't be sitting there and eating it the whole time we're lifting. Don't get me wrong, but if a kid comes in with some fruit snacks or a bar, man, eat that stuff during the warm up, and then we'll get rolling, type of thing. Like I'm never going to get onto a kid for that, and I always too when they come in, where's your water bottle? Where's your water bottle? But type of deal. So that was one thing we did at Baylor, especially. Like they had to hold their water bottle up and show us that they had their water bottle in the weight room type of thing to make sure that everybody was hydrating. So, and I understand it, in the classroom, but I wish more teachers would be a little bit more understanding. Maybe especially as the kid walks into the classroom, let them finish eating and drinking a little bit so they have enough fuel in them for the rest of the day. And I understand kid can't sit there and eat a whole meal during a classroom, but find balance and trying to make sure that they're getting enough in. So,
And I think it could be directly tied to academic performance as well. If you don't,
100%.
if your brain's not fueled,
Yep.
I told you I was going to wrap it up, and I will. So this will be the last question I'll give you today.
Sounds good, brother.
You've worked with some amazing people, and now you have people that work for you. So you've got the mentor to mentee relationship that you've been on both sides of it. So who influenced you the most, and what advice did they give you that you now give to the guys that you're a mentor for?
There's a lot of different names, just because I've been around for a little while and I worked under really a bunch of good people. Um, and I wouldn't even just say it's always them saying it, but it's how they act and respond and what they do. Coach Yachts, my first day was like, you've either been fired or you're going to be fired in this profession. So don't take it personal, type of deal. So I think that's one thing that guys have got to remember. You're not for everybody. Everybody's not for you. So, you got to be okay with that at some point. Pat Ivy and Coach Kaz, the way they spoke to the athletes and motivated the athletes just was different than a bunch of people. So just watching those guys, Coach Kaz, the way he put a staff together and allowed that staff to do what they needed to do. I was always a strong guy, so he allowed me to be myself and not have to be someone else. Coach Roof, like I talked about, he was the speed guy, so he was able to do that and be himself. I think those are really two good guys about how they ran a program type thing. And then just so many people I wouldn't even say worked for, but just worked with. But and even like guys that I may have been in charge of, but I worked with them. Like, got great information from Chris Rue for sprints, all talk with the catapult stuff. John Fleury and Paul Constantine were two of my guys at Indiana that, I mean, just amazing guys. The way they interacted with people, the way we interacted together. The head strength coach of the Falcons, Griff, um, the dynamic explosive stuff he does, and just the overall base of knowledge that he has. It's so hard to say like one or two guys, you know what I mean? And it's not always, like I said, like a saying, but you work with a guy for a couple of years and you start taking on some of those things he does really well. And then even not on the negative side, but you're like, man, not a bad idea, but I just don't know if I would do that personally where I'm at type of thing too. So, even in a great situation, you learn what things that you want to do and some things that's just not for me. I just don't think I would do it that way.
I can understand that. And, through the years of construction and different things like that, that's the first thing they tell you, this job ain't going to last forever.
Right.
Be prepared for the rainy days. And when I was welding a lot, it's like, you're going to bust a test. It's just what's going to happen. So hopefully you don't have all your eggs in that basket and you're ready for something else.
Yep. Yeah.
Well, Coach, I appreciate this. I didn't know that we would get down some of these rabbit holes. I didn't even use that many of our notes because it was organic, and I appreciate that. So
fun. Thank you so much for having me, man. I really appreciate it. It's nice doing stuff like this. So, and it's nice to finally talk to you in person. So I listened to you a bunch, but to hear you and to watch some of the stuff you're doing is really cool. So I liked your Twitter and Instagram and all that kind of stuff. You're, like I said, you're doing some really cool stuff with your athletes. So keep it up.
I appreciate that. When I put some of that stuff out there, I'm like, I don't know what people are going to think of this. Hopefully it's good. So
it doesn't matter though, because at the end of the day, none of us have the right answers. We're just trying to find what works. And if we're not making mistakes, then we're not really thinking outside the box and trying some different stuff. So just like we talked about some of the stuff, it may not work great, but we're going to see if it does, because you never know what it's going to help and how it's going to help or who it's going to help. And then you're like, next time, didn't really see what I wanted from it, so I don't think I'm going to do that again type deal. And continuously learning.
That's the truth. And every athlete's going to change what you do. You may have to go back to some of them ideas that didn't work.
Yep. That was one thing. So you ever see the old West Side seated cleans for your upper back? It's just a dumbbell seated clean, almost looks like you're rowing a boat, but it's for upper back mass. And man, I forgot about that thing for like 5 or 6 years. I got to Syracuse and I had the big boys. We were just flat up top, didn't have a whole lot of mass. So I was like, man, let me get back to doing these. And it freaking helped our upper back, helped our shoulders, helped our pop in our hands with our offensive linemen. So some stuff that you don't think about for 10 years may come back and you need to use it again. It's just a tool in a toolbox.
That's the importance of, you don't have to remember it all, but knowing where to go to look for it. That old Einstein way of thinking.
Who to ask?
Yes, exactly. Well, Coach, this has been a blast, and I appreciate it. I'll be excited to get this out and let people hear it.
Sounds great, big man. We'll talk soon.
Hey, Voodoo Power listeners. Thanks for watching and spending a little time listening to the coaches that we present on here. The channel has been growing because of community, and I really appreciate you being part of it. If you found this video helpful, hit the like button, leave a comment to let me know your thoughts, and share it with someone who might enjoy it. Those small things make a big difference in helping the channel reach more athletes and coaches. And if you haven't already, consider subscribing so you don't miss the next video. Thanks again for being here, and I'll see you on the next one.